الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير صدق الله العظيم. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him this night as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we beseech Him for His protection, for we live in dangerous times. We pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Before we begin, let me, with your permission, recognize the presence of Ambassador Yofadlan Rose, who's a dear friend, who traveled all the way from Malaysia to Cape Town in the month of March to participate in our second International Islamic Retreat, and now to help us organize the third International Islamic Retreat here in Malaysia, inshallah. And all you have to do is to go to my website and you know what I'm talking about. And to also welcome a group who traveled all the way from Singapore to be here tonight for this lecture. It was night time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of the night as that which shrouds, so mysteriously shrouds. The night conceals so much. The night so mysteriously shrouds so much. And it was night time. And the Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, was asleep. It is clear that he was asleep at the home of his cousin, Hani. But there are reports that he was also asleep at the Kaaba, which possibly indicates that he was first transported from the home of Hani to the Kaaba. It was a blessed night, a night like no other night has ever been, and no other night will ever be. A historic night, when Allah took His servant, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the last of them all. So many of them since the time of Adam alayhi salam, and this is the last. Took him on a miraculous journey, pregnant with meaning, with signs which must be understood. Took him on a journey from this sacred masjid. At that time there were only two. Masajid is a plural of masjid, because there are many who will be listening to this lecture and know nothing of Arabic. Masajid is the plural of masjid, and a masjid is a temple, a place where you worship. Took him on a journey from this sacred masjid, which is the one in Makkah, where our father Adam alayhi salam worshipped, where our father Ibrahim alayhi salam built a masjid. It was in the Torah. It's no longer there now. Took him from this masjid to that distant masjid, but there are only two. The third one is yet to be built. So which is that distant masjid? It is the one built by Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam. And where was it built? In Jerusalem. These are very simple questions to answer. Took him on that sacred journey, miraculous journey, to that masjid which is located in a land which is specially blessed. And the Quran refers to it as Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, the Holy Land. And we cannot understand international politics today. We cannot understand international economics today. We cannot possibly understand why the US dollar is now in ICU in some hospital there in Washington, without reference to this term, the Holy Land. Took him from this masjid to that one which is located in the Holy Land. Why did he take him on this journey? لِنُرِيَهُ مِنْ آيَاتِنَا, to show him signs of events which are to unfold in the historical process. Most of these signs pertain to Akhirul Zaman, the last stage. Most of these signs pertain to that branch of knowledge which we call Islamic eschatology. It's a difficult term, so let's not use that. Akhirul Zaman. Islamic eschatology. لِنُرِيَهُ مِنْ آيَاتِنَا إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. Surely he is the one who hears, and he is the one who has basira. It's not only to see, but it's to see with something inside. In the English language, they put a preposition in front of sight, and they make a new word, they call it insight. Sight, that is internal, insight, insight, sight which is internal. Oh, but this is another branch of knowledge now. It's another big word, I'm sorry. It's called epistemology. How do we acquire knowledge? What are the sources of knowledge? Those who today rule the world with an iron fist and with amazing arrogance. They say that knowledge comes only from external observation and experimentation. And they've given us the scientific method, which is very, very, very important. Oh no. But to say that that alone qualifies as knowledge is wrong. Because the Quran says that we see not only with the external eye, but we also see with the internal eye. I know that all the universities are going to be quite uncomfortable with this part of the lecture. But there is something called internal sight, basira. And this is an event pregnant with basira. The subject is divided into 4 parts, and it is a difficult task to condense them into 1 hour. In the first part, we will describe the event. And one cannot possibly include all the information. So we have to be selective in the first part. So if we leave out something, you need not come and tell us, oh, but you forgot that. In the second part, we will ask the question, when did this event occur? In the third part, we'll ask, why did this event occur? And then in the fourth and very interesting part, we'll ask, how did this event occur? And so let us begin with Allah's blessed name, to try to compact all of this into 1 short lecture. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam informed us, he himself, when he woke up the next morning, he said to Hani, Hani, this is what happened last night. And then he narrated the event. And I have to tell the people, and she held on to him, don't do that. Nobody will believe you. And she's holding on to him, and he pulled away and left. So we get the story, the event, the narrative from the Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the angel Gabriel, Jibreel alayhi salam, woke him up from sleep and took him to the entrance of the masjid. And already you can see I'm leaving out small bits of information. And there was a heavenly animal. It was smaller than a horse, bigger than a mule. It was white. Some reports speak of a human head. And it had wings, 4 legs and wings. When this information reaches Medina, where a very large community of Jews are resident, it's going to be a bombshell in Medina. At that time, Medina was known as Yathrib. This heavenly animal, which flies through the sky at a speed so great that every stride it takes reaches to the horizon. Why would this information create a thunderbolt amongst the Jews? Why? There's an American scholar whose name is Richard Friedman, who is a scholar of the Bible, PhD from Harvard. He wrote a very interesting book entitled, Who Wrote the Bible? And I would recommend that you read that book. And in that book he tells us that the temple or the masjid built by Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam, had a special room in which the holy relics were stored, like the staff of Musa alayhi salam. And that room was called the Holy of the Holies. In the Quran it is called the Mihrab. The Mihrab. Today our Mihrab is a niche in the wall. But the Mihrab was the Holy of Holies, a special room, to which only the chief rabbi had access, no one else. And Richard Friedman, on the basis of his research, described what was put into that mihrab. He said there were two of these animals, not one. Two. And they were made of wood, because the Torah prohibited graven images. And their wings were stretched out wide, so that the wingtip of one was touching the wingtip of the other. Also, the Jews knew about Borak. And they knew that Borak had been used to transport others in the past. This was nothing new to them. Oh no. But now Nabi Muhammad alayhi salam is asked to mount on Borak, and a message is being sent to Banu Israel, that they would recognize that this is indeed a true prophet, because they know about this heavenly animal. It was there in the temple by Solomon. The Prophet ﷺ mounted Borak, and then Borak took off through the night. And we are told that as he was traversing through the night, at his speed that was so great that every step traversed the horizon and beyond, that he stopped several times. We will mention only two, because these are in Sahih Bukhari. That there was a caravan which had camped for the night, and Borak came down, and the people had left a container with water, and it was covered with a lid. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam got off Borak, removed the lid, drank the water, replaced the lid, and then Borak took off again. And then a second time Borak came down, and another caravan had camped for the night, and a camel had broken loose. And he called out to the people who were sleeping, "Wake up, wake up. Your camel has broken loose." And then Borak took off again. Sometime later, maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe a month, we don't know how long, this was confirmed. When the caravans arrived in Mecca, they confirmed, yes, this happened. That we went to sleep in the night and woke up in the morning and the vessel was empty, yet the cover was on the vessel. And yes, we did hear a voice calling out to us, "Wake up." And yes, a camel had indeed broken loose, and we searched and found the camel, confirming that this is an event which actually took place. Borak then arrived in Jerusalem, and Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is greeted in the masjid, Masjid al-Aqsa, by all the prophets of Allah. But the historical evidence is that at this time there was no masjid there. The historical evidence is that the Byzantine Christians who had taken over the city had destroyed everything, and they had consigned it to be a garbage bin, a garbage heap. And when the city was conquered sometime later, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu himself participated in the effort of clearing away all the garbage, and then gave instructions that you must wait for 3 rainfalls so that the place can be washed clean before we again make it a place of worship. And so clearly, if he reaches Jerusalem and he is in the masjid. And in the masjid he is welcomed by all the prophets of Allah. There is more to this than our dimension of space and time. There is more to this than our dimension of space and time. After he has led the salat with all the prophets of Allah present, then he ascends on a heavenly ladder into the, not the heavens, no, into the samawat. Samawat is the plural of sama. And in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces us to the term. هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا. He it is who has created for you all that is on the earth. ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن سبع سماوات. We don't have Einstein with us here tonight. He then directed his attention to the sky. I don't know what other word to use, to the sky. And he fashioned it into 7 skies. I don't know what better word to use. Actually, it will be 7 worlds of space and time. And in Surah Al-Mulk, Allah speaks about them and He says, الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا. He it is who has created 7 worlds of space and time alongside each other. And so Nabi Muhammad ﷺ enters into these different worlds of space and time. In the Quran, this is referred to in its totality as Al-Ghayb, the unseen world. One of the amazing characteristics of the age in which we now live, an age that Ambassador Adlan Rose has experienced very well as an ambassador, is that consciousness of Al-Ghayb and belief in Al-Ghayb as a matter of conviction is drifting away from mankind. And so more and more people are now imprisoned in the consciousness of this being the only world and this being the only life. And so no longer do people have any consciousness of the consequences of conduct in this world for the life which is to come. When we believe that this is the only world, that there is no reality beyond material reality, as most of those who graduate from universities today now believe, then that spells the end of the religious way of life. What remains is only an empty shell, and the heart of religion has disappeared. And so these 7 worlds of space and time are now going to be experienced by a human being. In English there is an expression, I don't know whether you have it in Bahasa. Seeing is believing. What you have in Bahasa? Ambassador? Seeing is believing. Huh? And so, a human being like us, إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ, You are a human being, and I am also a human being. إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. You are human beings, and I am a human being. That doesn't mean you're the same as me. No. There are some human beings who are worse than animals. And there are other human beings who have hearts, who can feel oppression. So, إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ means you are human beings and I'm a human being. And so a human being is taken to have a direct experience of the unseen world, which is the foundation of the religious way of life. And this is not an ordinary human being. For 40 years he lived amongst them. For 40 years they had a chance to observe him from the time he was a child. And all of Makkah agreed upon one thing, that this is a truthful man. And so they gave him the title Al-Amin, the truthful one, the trustworthy one. There are other people who, if they say the sun is shining, you have to go outside and look in the sky to see whether the sun is actually shining. Huh? They are the same ones who said they killed Osama bin Laden and threw his body in the sea, and then a big fish swallowed him. So this is someone who does not tell lies. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam warned us 1400 years ago about CNN and Al Jazeera and so on. He said, in the last age there will be great liars, so beware. In the last age there will be great liars, so beware. And so Allah takes His servant, who has already established his credentials as a truthful person, takes him to a direct experience of that unseen world, and then to return and to say, this is what I saw with my own eyes. And since seeing is believing, and we believe that he is a truthful person, we believe in what he has said. As he traverses the Samawat, he is greeted by prophets of Allah. But they are dead. They are dead. Oh, we are being taught a lesson now. Don't say that because someone is dead, that is the end of him. Because Ibrahim alayhi salam is dead, but Ibrahim alayhi salam is there in the Samawat. And when he greets Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, he does not greet him the way the other prophets greet him. They say, welcome, my brother. But he says, welcome, my son. A dead man, but he's alive in another world. And so we send a message to those who today control power in the world, that this is not the last chapter of the book. There are other chapters to come. In a court where you cannot bribe a judge. There are other chapters to come where absolute justice is assured for everyone. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is also greeted by the angels. He has been seeing the angel already here on earth, Jibreel alayhi salam. But now he sees so many more of the angels, and they all greet him with a smile, an angelic smile. I have just come back from Indonesia, which is now in a state of destitution because of riba. Riba. You know what is riba? You rip them off. And their loss is your gain. So they live as slaves while you live in the comfort zone. I don't need to say any more. This is riba. But everywhere I went in Indonesia, I found the people who smile. And they smile so sweetly and so innocently. I said to myself, I wish I could smile like that. And I found them so gentle. They were so gentle. Not only women, the men as well. I said to myself, I wish I could be as gentle as that. Because this is the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. The angels smiled at him to greet him. The way the Indonesians smiled so sweetly. But there was one angel which did not smile. So he was puzzled. And he asked, who is that angel? And Jibreel alayhi salam, who was accompanying the Prophet, said, that is Malik, the angel in charge of guarding Jahannam, the entrance to Jahannam. Not even for you did he smile. And so a message is being sent that on that day, for those who are on the wrong path, there will be no smiles. And then Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam asked whether he could take a look at Jahannam. It is a vision. And Malik, Jibreel alayhi salam now gives instructions to the angel to open the cover of Jahannam. He doesn't say to him, would you be so kind as to lift the cover? No. Jibreel alayhi salam is muta'in thumma ameen. He's one to be obeyed. He gives an instruction, you must obey. So the angel lifts the cover. And as he lifts the cover, the flames shoot out of Jahannam. Something that should terrify us. Because this Isra and Miuraj provides us with Islamic eschatology, the signs of the last day. And among these is the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, that 999 out of every 1,000 would enter into the hellfire. Only one for Jannah. When the flames subsided, he looked down into the hellfire and he saw many things, and he came back to tell us what he saw. We have time to mention only one. Only one. He said, I saw men with huge bellies, transparent, you could see. And there were snakes inside the belly. So he was astonished by this. And he asked, who are these men? And Jibreel alayhi salam responded and said, these are the men who consumed riba. Riba. Not even in Europe, not even in Europe was riba permitted. All of mankind, with small exceptions, all of mankind abhorred riba. Even the Arabs in Makkah when the flood came and washed away the Kaaba, and they had to reconstruct it, they gave the order, we will not accept any riba money. And these are people worshipping idols made of wood and stone. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam cursed all four. And he said that they are all equally guilty. The one who takes riba, the one who gives riba, the one who records the transaction, and the two witnesses. What would you say if I were to say to you, and alhamdulillah, I have studied my subject. I want to tell you this, I have studied my subject. The this that we are using, the this is a vehicle of riba. Yeah. Yes. Because of this is one of the reasons why Indonesia is today enslaved and Singapore is in the comfort zone, while Bangladesh is enslaved and Pakistan is enslaved and much of Africa is enslaved, while they live with 3 Mercedes-Benz parked in their garage. Riba. So these were men who consumed riba. The money lender does not always lend you money on interest, so he gets rich because it is a guaranteed investment. Come rain or come sunshine, he gets his pound of flesh. No. That's one of the reasons why the money lender lends. The second reason is the money lender lends you on interest because he wants to lend you enough to ensure you cannot repay. And his loan on interest is actually meant to enslave you. And that is what they have done today. After the azan, we'll then proceed to say what else he experienced. Is there time for the azan now? Time? How many? 5 minutes? 7. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is then transported to be given a glimpse of Jannah. And in Jannah, among the things he saw was a beautiful girl in Jannah. Allah has said about the male and the female that they are garments to each other, they are inseparable. And so for all the things in the world, that which is dearest to a man is woman. And of all the things in the world that is dearest to a woman is a man. That's our way of looking at it in Islam. And once there is this intense attraction between the male and the female, this longing of the night for the day and the day for the night, not amongst the servants of Allah. Never, 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 never will you ever have this abomination of a man marrying another man. It is a disgrace for a civilization which promised so much and which gave to the world so much. And the world has benefited so much from modern Western civilization. We will never deny that. It is an abomination and a disgrace that this civilization should have been hijacked to now become the world's greatest oppressor, with blood on its hands and blood on its feet, innocent children. And that this is the civilization that now gives us a marriage certificate of a man marrying another man. And so in Isra and Miuraj, he's shown a beautiful girl. And he describes the beauty of this woman, this young woman. And then he returns to inform one of his companions that this is what Allah has provided for you in Jannah. This is not something that is sensual in an evil way. Because we want to preserve in Islam, preserve the attraction of the male for the female and the attraction of the female for the male. We mentioned only one thing for Jahannam and only one for Jannah. But you can do your homework and you can study and remember all the other things he saw. And then we are told that he was taken beyond the high sama to the Sidratul Muntaha. The Sidra is a low tree which has very large leaves, so it gives abundant shade. And elsewhere in the Quran, the tree occupies a significant place in the language concerning Jannah, the tree. The bird is also there, and the rivers are there in Jannah, indicating the trees and birds and rivers and mountains are not here on earth simply to be admired, but there is more to a tree for us than simply glancing at the tree. For example, Allah says in the Quran, وَاللَّهُ أَنْبَتَكُمْ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ نَبَاتًا. And Allah has caused you to grow forth from the earth like trees and plants. Trees are not all the same. There are some trees which are specially produced for delivering shade. And there are other trees which are ornamental trees for beauty. And there are other trees which are for timber, so furniture, and you can cook. And there are other trees which produce food and which produce fruit for your dessert. And there are other trees which produce medicine, and there are trees which give you your toothbrush. Similarly, human beings are not all the same. Inna sa'ayakum lashatta. Allah did not create you all the same. There are some of you who are like ornamental trees. And He mentions in the Quran women of such beauty who the men will get in heaven. He does not mention as much for the women because of divine modesty dealing with women. But a woman can imagine what Allah has in store for me in Jannah. A man as handsome as Yusuf alayhi salam. So there are men and women who are like ornamental trees. And there are others who are like trees which are to produce timber. This is called different. I think the term in psychology is aptitude. People are of different aptitudes. And so we must look at trees and learn, and rivers and learn. And this is Sidratul Muntaha, a tree. And this tree is located there at the Arsh. Look where a tree is located. And so don't pass trees. Don't pass trees in an absent-minded way, but pause and look at a tree and learn from a tree. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam gazes at the tree. Is yaghsha sidrata ma yaghsha in Surah An-Najm. The tree is shrouded with what it is shrouded. And Allah uses a tree to deliver signs of things which are to come. And Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, when he is gazing at the tree, مَا زَاغَ الْبَصَرُ وَمَا طَغَى, his gaze, meaning with the internal eye, does not waver, nor does it tire. But Musa alayhi salam, when he asks, Arini anzur ilayk, show me yourself, I want to see you. And Allah says, Lan tarani, not possible, tabule, you can't see me. But look at the rock. And Allah directed His divine tajalli, I can't translate that word, to the rock. And the rock exploded. And Musa alayhi salam fell down unconscious. But Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, with a similar experience, مَزَاغَ الْبَصَرُ, his gaze did not waver. What did he see while gazing at that tree which was shrouded, ma yaghsha, with what it was shrouded? We'll come to that a little later. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala greets His messenger, Muhammad alayhi salam. التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. A conversation between the Lord who is worshipped and the one who is worshipping the servant. And this part of Isra and Miuraj is made a part of our Salah. And Nabi Muhammad ﷺ returned to say to us that while we cannot do what he did, no, that was a unique event, we are also capable of our Miuraj, meaning our capacity to penetrate and to experience directly the unseen world. Our Miuraj. When he said, As-salatu mi'rajul mu'min, that salat is the vehicle through which a believer can experience the unseen world, the samawat. Now, he then returned. No, sorry, we forgot one thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala greets His messenger and gives him something to take back. Not one, two. He's given salat. The 5 daily salat. Prior to this, for 10 years, or maybe 11 years, salat has been performed by the Prophet ﷺ and those who accepted him and accepted Islam in only 2 rakat at a time, and at periodic intervals. But now salat becomes 5 times a day. And he returns with this gift of salat. There is a hadith about Musa alayhi salam and 50 and 40 and 30 and 20. We need not speak about that at this time. But he's also given something else. The last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah is revealed in the Isra Mi'raj. All the rest of the Quran is revealed here. Why should the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah reveal over there? It's a subject you might want to study yourself. He then returns and he announces to the people, this is what happened. And it became a fitna, a test and a trial for the people. And there were Muslims who left Islam because of this. There were Muslims who left Islam because the Prophet said, last night I went to Jerusalem And I came back. And it was not a dream because even I can go to the moon and come back. Huh? Haji Radwan could go to the sun and come back. In a dream. So this was not a dream. I went to Jerusalem and came back last night. And many Muslims left Islam because of this. And there's something coming tomorrow when, as we anticipate, Egypt holds its elections. And the Egyptian armed forces function as suspiciously docile as they function in response to the uprisings that removed Hosni Mubarak. We want to say to the Egyptian armed forces, all of us are not blind. Oh no. And when the elections are held in Egypt, predictably the Ikhwan is going to sweep the polls. And you're going to have an Islamic government in Egypt. You're going to hear the drum beating. Oh yes, you're going to hear the drum beating from those who see with only one eye. And then the Western world is going to say, well, what about Sharia? Huh? You know how they speak about people, they say, you guys. We don't use that language. You guys have been saying for so long, you want Sharia. Well, go ahead and enforce your Sharia now. Come on, what are you not obeying on? And then the Islamic government in Egypt announces, Sharia is now enforced in Egypt. That's what they're waiting for. And then the test will come. When a parent of a 6-year-old girl, Egyptian girl, no, 6-year-old child rather, girl child, comes to the court for permission for a marriage certificate with a man who is 55 years of age, and asks for the marriage certificate. Of course, CNN has to be there, and Al Jazeera has to be there, the New York Times has to be there, the Washington Post has to be there. The whole world is going to be watching that. And because of an incapacity to recognize that the Quran is the supreme authority in Islam, and the Quran sits in judgment over the hadith and not vice versa. And in the same way that there was corruption of preceding scriptures, like the Kaaba was there and they took it out, so too you cannot corrupt the Quran, but you could fabricate a hadith. Oh yes, you can. So because of an incapacity to recognize the authority of the Quran and the status of the Quran sitting in judgment over the hadith, and therefore to be able to recognize inconsistency between hadith and Quran, I expect the Egyptian court to say yes, permissible. We just gave a lecture in Indonesia at an institution of Islamic learning, with 200 students present. And at the end of the lecture we had lunch with the head of the institution. And the head of the institution had no problem saying to me, Jais, permissible. Now the Australian government made it a law in Australia that if an Australian goes abroad and has sexual relations with a child, he can be arrested in Australia for a crime committed outside of Australia. But now, it's not a crime anymore. You can just come over to the world of Islam, wherever the Sharia is enforced, and you can marry a 5-year-old girl. And you can marry a 6-year-old girl, and you can take her home with you. She is your wife. No one is there to come into the home to see what you're doing with her. This is the shame, and this is the disgrace that is coming tomorrow. Because Nabi Muhammad ﷺ never married Aisha radiallahu ta'ala. No marriage certificate, no marriage ceremony ever took place. Never. What happened? And it's there in the seerah. What happened? is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicated that He had chosen her for him as his wife. So he had no choice in the matter. He never married her. She had no choice in the matter. A marriage ceremony is not valid if a girl has no choice in the matter. He never married her. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have sent that communication when she was 1 year old. Not 6, 1. He could have sent down that communication when she was 1 month old. Because He is the Creator. But it is unlawful, it is haram to have sexual relations with a girl before she reaches to being a woman. And that can be established from the Quran. If it is haram to have sexual relations with a girl before she becomes a woman, how can you marry her before she has become a woman? Tomorrow it's coming to Egypt. And when it is broadcast all over the world on every television channel, Muslims are going to hang their heads in shame. They're going to feel as though they're the laughing stock of the world. And many Muslims are going to leave Islam tomorrow. So when the communication came, Aisha simply had to remain in her parents' home until she became a woman. And when she became a woman, she then went to the household of her husband. Is there anything wrong with that? Before this strange civilization came, all through the world, girls were married shortly after they became women. And what age did Maryam have? Alayha salam. What was her age when the angel came to her and said, "You're going to have a baby boy"? And she asked, "How can I have a baby boy when no man has ever touched me?" She had just become a woman. That was the age. And so, we are now approaching a moment, and this is only one, the marriage of a 6-year-old. There are others. There are other time bombs waiting to explode, but we do not have the time tonight. There were those who left Islam when he said, "I went to Jerusalem last night and came back." And then they challenged him, "If you went to Jerusalem, come on, describe it to us." And Allah had Jerusalem held before his eyes. And he was able to describe Jerusalem while looking at it. It took me too much time to do part 1. So I have less time now to do part 2 and 3 and 4. So I'm going to have to shorten it. When did this happen? It's a pity for me to have to make it so brief now. When did this happen? That was a moment for him when it happened, of grief, as this is a moment of grief for us, when our people are being slaughtered. For 10 years he had preached Islam. And after 10 years there were only a handful of Muslims. For 10 years he was protected by his tribe, Banu Hashim. His uncle was the head of the tribe. But now his uncle died, Abu Talib. And who is the new chief? Abu Lahab, who's an enemy. And the tribe will no longer protect him. So he's in grave danger. For 10 years while preaching Islam, he had Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha behind him. And Allah never meant to be for us to live alone. If you have a wife beside you, a wife who supports you, there's nothing more precious in the world than that. To have a wife beside you, you can trust, who is trustworthy, who is virtuous, and who supports you in your work. There's nothing more precious than that in the whole world. But she's gone. She dies. He goes to Taif for seeking some kind of security. And Taif pelts him with stones, and blood is flowing from his body as he returns to Mecca. He dares not enter his own city because news has already reached Mecca, what Taif did. So if he enters Mecca, he can be stoned by his own people. This is the darkest hour of the darkest day of all his mission. It is at this time that he puts his head to sleep. But he never gave up. He never gave up. He never wavered. No, I will not give up this mission. They can do what they want. But if I have to go and hide in a mountain cave to worship the one God, I'm going to do it. I'll give up the house in Kiel, I'll give up the car, I'll give up the job, I'll give up everything in order to be faithful to the one God and to the truth. Great men are like that. Fidel Castro didn't become Fidel Castro with a backbone made of recycled paper. No, you're sitting on the doorstep of Uncle Sam in Cuba. And you survive all these years in Cuba. Not just survive. Cuba has some of the best medical care in the whole of the Western Hemisphere. Cuba. Because he never gave up. He never wavered. So Allah now intervenes and gives him the Isra and Miuraj. And what happens after the Isra and Miuraj is that Allah now opens the doors to success one after the other. And so success in the revolutionary struggle is not because of our planning. It is because we remain faithful to the mission, come rain or come sun. And then Allah takes us and charts the course to victory. There's the first pledge of Aqaba, and then there's the second pledge of Al-Aqaba, and then there is the Hijrah, and then there is victory at Badr, and then there is Fath Makkah, one after the other, until truth triumphs over false. So this is the answer to the question, when did it occur? And the lesson for us today is the same as it was for them. All that you have to do is be strong. Do not give up. Do not waver, regardless of the price you have to pay. Of course, they're going to call you a terrorist. And yet there are going to be cars following you wherever you go. Do not give up. Do not waver. Allah will protect His servant when Allah chooses to protect him. And the truth must eventually triumph over falsehood. Why did this occur? It is not by accident that the first verse of Surah Al-Isra is devoted to this subject. Subhanalladhi, which I recited at the beginning, who took his servant from this masjid to that masjid. This verse is placed at the beginning of Surah Banu Israel. It's also called Surah Banu Israel, and it's called Surah Al-Isra. Because there is a link between Isra and Mi'raj, and events which are to unfold in the world, connected with the Jews. Connected with the Jews. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam returned to tell us about these events. But what is so important for us at this moment is that the Quraysh did not know how to deal with a man from their own midst, who had lived with them all his life, who is truthful, who is held in the highest esteem, and now declares that he is a prophet like unto Moses and Abraham. So they decided to send a delegation to Medina to consult with the rabbis. And the rabbis sent back this reply, asking these three questions, which only a prophet can answer. No one else can answer. Ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the earth. And in this, there is one of the signs of the last day, in this question. Ask him about the young men in the cave, and in this, there is one of the signs of the last day. And ask him about the roof. And this was the question which was supposed to be the spoiler, to divert attention. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the answers to two of the questions, which pertain to the signs of the last day. Sent the answers in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. One, Gog and Magog, and the other, Dajjal. And then the question concerning the roof, he gave us the answer in Surah Banu Israel, or Surah Al-Isra, meaning there's a link between Banu Israel and the signs of the last day. There is a link between Banu Israel and the events which are unfolding in the world today. There is a link between Jerusalem and international politics, between Jerusalem and international economics today. I wrote this book 10 years ago, Jerusalem in the Quran. Cover design right here in Kia, published right here in Kia. Many people have read the book, but we do not as yet have a response to this book from the world of Islamic scholarship. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad to inform you that we now have Jerusalem in the Quran in Malay. Jerusalem di dalam Al-Quran. And we have it outside. A message is being sent to Banu Israel. And it is being sent to us as well. Both to them and to us. That all the events that are taking place in the Isra and Miuraj are taking place in order for us to be told and for us to be able to understand the end of history, to understand what is going to be taking place in the world at that time when the last age comes. And it is for our scholarship now to go to this vast amount of information which is in the Quran and which is in the Ahadith. It's not just there to be studied as a story, but rather the events of the Isra and Mi'raj help you to understand the reality of the world today and help you to respond to tomorrow. Now let me come to the how. And this is the most interesting part of the lecture. How did it take place? As I said, we don't have Einstein with us here tonight. But it would have been interesting if Einstein could have been present, because he's one of the foremost thinkers in this subject, on space and time. What happened in the Isra and Mi'raj is that Nabi Muhammad ﷺ was transported from this world of space and time to other worlds of space and time, the Samawat. So it is possible for a human being to have his physical body so transformed that this physical body in its transcendental form can enter into the Samawat. But the Isra and Mi'raj also indicated to us that not only is forward movement possible, but also backward movement, forward, backward movement, or reverse movement. Because he came down, took the lid off, drank the water, which is something which belongs to this world of space and time. And then went back, and then came down and said the camel is loose, and then went back. So forward, backward movement in different worlds of space and time is possible, but I don't think Einstein knew that. Why is this so important for the last age? How is Isra and Mi'raj communicating to us immense knowledge which is of absolutely strategic importance in the struggle to defend ourselves against the oppressors who are oppressing us around the world? I'll tell you why. At the heart of the last age is a mastermind created by Allah. He's called Dajjal. He is the mastermind who has created modern Western civilization. He's brilliant. Brilliant. Dajjal. Allah created him. Allah programmed him. The modern scientific and technological revolution could never have been delivered by any people other than the European. No other people could ever have done it. Only the Europeans. Why? Because there's nothing in history to explain, giving the antecedents, that the modern scientific and technological revolution emerged because of a legacy which led to it. No. The modern scientific and technological revolution came out of the blue with nothing to explain it, because it is Dajjal. Yes. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, of course you know that Dajjal was created to impersonate the true Messiah. So he has to one day rule the world from Jerusalem. You know that. This is the end of this book. And when he rules the world from Jerusalem, he has to say, I am the Messiah. Of course, that would be a lie. Why? The true Messiah is the son of Mary. We all know that. When he rules the world from Jerusalem, and he's very close to doing that now. Very close. That's why you have to study international politics, international economics, international monetary economics, strategic affairs, to understand how close he is to ruling the world. When he does that, and the people believe that he is the Messiah, then he can rub his hands and say, mission accomplished. But in order for him to do that, he must first liberate the Holy Land for the Jews. Because the Holy Land is under Muslim rule. He's already done that. In 1971. 40? You got homework to do. 1917. The British Army defeated the Ottoman Islamic Army in 1917. He has to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. He's already done that. Between 1917 and 1948, while the Holy Land was controlled by Britain under a mandate conferred by the League of Nations. He has to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land and get them to believe that this is Holy Israel. He's already done that. He created this Israel, this imposter Israel in 1948. You're not answering me convincingly. And then he has to get this Israel to become the ruling state in the world. Ask, what's his name? Barack Hosein Obama? Ask him who's ruling the world. And Barack Hussein Obama will tell you, Israel is ruling the world already. But behind the curtain, Israel has to wage big wars in order for Israel to replace the United States. The US dollar has to collapse, the US economy has to collapse. And now Mr. Putin has just agreed, hours ago. He's finally accepted, just hours ago, that the reason why the head of the International Monetary Fund was arrested on a trumped-up sexual charge was because he got the information that there was no gold left in Fort Knox. Who took the gold out? Ask Israel, no? Why don't you ask Israel? So the US economy is just waiting to collapse. It has to collapse. There's nowhere else it is not possible to survive. And once the US economy collapses, that's the end of the US as the ruling state in the world. But Israel also has to wage big wars, and this is why you have the Arab uprisings at the moment. The Arab uprisings, so that tomorrow you have all of these Islamic governments and so on. And then the cry can come up, the world of Islam is rising, posing a threat, menace to mankind. We've got to do something. And then Israel can unleash her wars by saying, we're only defending ourselves. And then of course when Israel becomes a ruling state, which is around the corner, then Dajjal will appear in human form. Nabi Muhammad ﷺ described him to us 1400 years ago. He would be a Jew, be a young man, he'd be powerfully built, he'd have curly hair, and he would rule the world from Jerusalem, declaring that I am the Messiah. But now we come to Isra and Miuraj. It is clear Dajjal is already released, because he's done all of this already. He's close to the end of his mission. So where is he? Where is he? That's the question. In Sahih Muslim, Nabi Muhammad ﷺ is reported in a hadith, recorded in Sahih Muslim, that when Dajjal is released, he live on earth for 40 days. Yawmun kasana, a day which will be like a year. Ambassador Adlan Rose knows this subject very well. Yawmun kashahr, a day which will be like a month. Yawmun kajum'ah, a day which will be like a week. وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ, and all the rest of his days will be like your days. When his day is like our day, he will be in our world of space and time. So we see him, human being. But when his day is not like our day, we can't see him, because he is in al-ghayb, he's in the samawat. Can you be on earth and yet be in the samawat? Of course. There are angels right here, in this surah, in Hotel Ampang, no, Hotel Di Palma, in Ampang Point in Kuala Lumpur. There are angels here. Can you see that? No, because they're not in our world of space and time. Are there jinn here in this surah? I know there are lots in Washington. Are there jinn here? Huh? Yes. Can we see them? No. Can an angel leave the unseen world and appear as a human being? Can it? Yes. Can a jinn leave the unseen world and appear in our world as a human being? Iblis did it. Can there be backward and forward movement? Backward and forward movement between that world and this world, so we never see the person? We never see him, but he's always backward and forward. Now we come to Surah Al-Kahf. Exactly what happened in Miuraj. The trip down and then back up, the trip down and then back up. Same thing in Surah Al-Kahf. The young men fled in the cave, remember? And Allah put them to sleep, remember? فَضَرَبْنَا عَلَىٰ آذَانِهِمْ فِي الْكَهْفِ سِنِينَ عَدَدًا. And they slept for many, many years, 300 years. ثُمَّ بَعَثْنَاهُمْ لِنَعْلَمَ أَيُّ الْحِزْبَيْنِ أَحْصَىٰ لِمَا لَبِثُوا أَمَدًا. And then we woke them up to teach you a lesson about time. That's why we did it. So they ask each other, how long have you been here? And one of them said, a day or a part of a day. Which sounds strange to us. Because if you've been sleeping for 300 years, when you wake up, then your fingernails should be as long as from Ampang Point to KLCC. But although they slept for 300 years, they were still biologically the same age. No change. Indicating that they did not spend the 300 years in our world of space and time. Indicating very clearly, they did not spend those 300 years in our world of space and time. They spend the 300 years in a world where women don't need cosmetics. No, you never grow old. Huh? But we are now faced with a difficult situation. While there is incontrovertible evidence that they did not spend the 300 years in our world of space and time, there is also incontrovertible evidence that they did spend the 300 years in our world of space and time. What is it? وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ. The sunlight entered the cave morning and evening, from the right and from the left. In the daytime, the sunlight did not enter the cave. And the bodies of the young men rolled to the right and to the left morning and evening. Rolling to the right and rolling to the left is space. Morning and evening is time. So for every single day of those 300 years, the bodies of the young men were in this world of space and time. Incontrovertible evidence. How do we solve it? Actually, I wish Einstein was here. Answer, backward and forward movement that was continuous. And so Dajjal is involved in backward and forward movement, which is continuous. So he is here. He is the mastermind who has given us the modern age. And yet you cannot see him. Finally, can we take a look out there? Because if we can take a look, we could do a lot of things in Afghanistan, you know. We could make life very difficult for them in Afghanistan and Iraq, in Libya, and wherever, in Syria, wherever else in the world you have this curious phenomenon called, have you heard of it before? Yankee Jihad. Yankee Jihad. One in Libya now, a Yankee Jihad. You have one in Syria now, a Yankee Jihad. Yes, it is possible for us. This is the conclusion of the lecture. Isra and Miuraj is telling us one of the crucially important things that come out of Isra and Miuraj is that Allah is informing us that we have the capacity to penetrate the samawat. In order for that penetration to take place, however, the angels first had to split open the chest of the Prophet ﷺ, take out his heart and wash it, and then put it back in and seal it, and then there was a seal at the back, the seal of prophethood. So in order for us to be able to penetrate the samawat, we need to bring purity to the heart. If you could do it in downtown KLCC, go ahead. My opinion is not possible. When you see haram all around you, and your heart does not shiver and shake, nothing happens to the heart, then that is not a heart that is fit to travel. But if you go to the remote countryside, the Malay call it kampung, and you know that you are in the remote countryside when you can't use a cell phone. When you cannot use a cell phone, now you know you're in the remote countryside. And in the remote countryside, you try to restore that heart, which when it sees haram, the heart would shake and shiver. There's not only haram all around us today. There's that haram over which Allah has declared war. For the money lender who is still taking interest. فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Banking system around the world is lending money on interest. Whose heart is shaking? Whose heart is filled with anger? Well then how can this heart travel? But if we get out of it, withdraw from it, and go to the remote countryside, away from all the haram, we have a chance to recover that heart. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, says the Quran. Qalbin salim, a heart which is sound and healthy. A heart which when it sees that which is haram, when it sees that which is shirk, responds to it with anger. Then it is possible. How can we travel? Is there a vehicle that will take us from this world to that world? Yes, there is. And Allah speaks of it in Surah An-Nur. He says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Nuru samawati wal ard. What is common to the samawat and to the ard is Allah's nur. Allah's nur. That nur is the vehicle. But Allah has specifically located that nur for us as a vehicle in two things. And I wish that the Sufis could have explained the subject better. Two things. Nabi Muhammad ﷺ is a vehicle of nur, and the Quran is a vehicle of nur. So if you want to, as a Muslim, you want to enter into the samawat, you can only enter into the samawat through the vehicle of nur. And that nur is the nur of Muhammad ﷺ and nur of the Quran. You don't believe me? Go ahead and try. See which taxi you will get. See which taxi you will get. Let me know. Yeah? Well then, if nur is the vehicle for travel, then you've got to build a dynamic, vibrant, living relationship with the Quran. A dynamic, vibrant, living relationship with the Quran. If the Quran is to function as nur, a vehicle, and you have to build a dynamic, a vibrant, a living relationship with Nabi Muhammad. I wish the Sufis had explained this subject better. we would not have all of this conflict in the world today. Okay, if this is the vehicle for travel, who is going to travel on the vehicle? In the case of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and in the case of one other person, the whole physical body was transformed and traveled. Who is the other person? Nabi? Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Why are you so hesitant to answer? Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Allah transformed his body as Allah transformed the body of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salam, so that they traveled. In the case of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salam, he returned. In the case of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, he will one day return. But in the case of a Sufi Sheikh, he said, if you take me, I'd never come back. So now, we can't go the way they went. So who is going to travel on the vehicle? Because if we can travel, we can see their plans. We can see what they're doing. We can see what is to come if we can travel. Yeah. In Surah Al-Mulk, Allah gives us the answer. الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا. He it is who has created the 7 worlds of space and time alongside each other. مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِنْ تَفَاوُتٍ. You will not find in Allah's creation any defect. فَارْجَعِ الْبَصَرَ هَلْ تَرَى مِنْ فُتُورٍ. Let your basar return. Do you find any defect? Meaning that it is with basar that you can travel and you can experience the samawat. When you stand in salat, when he said as-salatu mi'rajul mu'min, that it is with basar, that which the heart sees, basar. It is in that you can travel. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may allow us to constantly increase our understanding and penetration of this supremely important event, to prepare us to face not only the world today, but also the world tomorrow. That we also might be able to get that kind of a heart which will allow us to travel and experience the samawat. The Dajjal is constantly between the two worlds, this and that. And Allah is telling us that we have the capacity to penetrate the samawat. We pray that Allah may bless us with that. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين.
Assalamualaikum, Sheikh. Can you give us some insight on the New World Order? Yeah.
The New World Order is very old. It started with the change in Qibla, with the creation of a new Ummah, and they didn't like it. A new Qibla, a new Ummah, they didn't like it. It has proceeded with the efforts of Dajjal to try to successfully impersonate the true Messiah. The New World Order, every time it becomes another New World Order, it's simply another phase in the effort to eventually rule the world from Jerusalem. I've already explained to you what I did, but in this book, Jerusalem in the Quran, I've been able to do more extensive explanation to show how when Dajjal was in his first phase of a day which is like a year, it is from the island of Britain that he launched his attack. In consequence of that, Britain became the first ruling state in the modern world. And the world therefore experienced something called Pax Britannica. Only a Muslim scholar, no one else, no one else, only a Muslim scholar can explain Pax Britannica. No think tank in Washington could be. And then came the second phase of a day which is like a month. And Britain, the ruling state, had to give way to a second ruling state, and the New World Order moved into another phase. And Pax Britannica was replaced by Pax Americana, the United States of America as a new ruling state. And these ruling states were created and maintained in order to advance the mission of eventually ruling the world from Jerusalem. And when Dajjal is going to be in a day which is like a week, then Pax Americana will have to give way. And we are now living through that moment in time when Pax Americana has to give way. They can't stop it in Washington. They can do what they want. They've even jailed the head of the IMF. It's not going to stop it. And a new ruling state will have to replace the United States. And we say that that new ruling state is going to be Israel. Okay? And when Israel replaces the United States, the New World Order would have reached into its final phase. And after Israel rules the world for a day, which is like a week, then the Dajjal would emerge and declare, I am the Messiah. But there is only one major force in the world resisting Dajjal. Only one. I mean, we admire Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. Of course, we admire Evo Morales in Bolivia, mashallah. Yes, we admire these men. They are resisting. We admire the Turkish government, not the military. The military is an ally of Israel. But the Turkish government is resisting. We don't know when Pakistan will wake up. We don't know. But there is only one major force in the world which is resisting Dajjal. And that is the true servants of Allah who are Muslims and who are true followers of Muhammad. So the New World Order is actually the phases of Dajjal as he moves towards ruling the world from Jerusalem.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I was wondering if you could just point out the similarities between Dajjal in Islam and the Christian conception of the Antichrist. And I was just wondering why Christians wouldn't be able to recognize Dajjal when he manifests himself in this space and time.
Christian eschatology, excuse me, Christian eschatology is terribly muddled up. I don't know what better word I could use. In the medieval ages, when Christian scholars paid more attention to eschatology, than they do today. A Christian does not know. And so he says that the Antichrist has to be a Muslim. The demonization of Islam has been so great by European Christianity. Antichrist has to be a Muslim. And because of the strange and mysterious alliance between Christians and Jews today, it is almost impossible for a Christian, any scholarship in Christianity, to declare that the Antichrist is going to be a Jew. But in our case, Nabi Muhammad was spoken with very great clarity. But apart from this, they do have some insight that the mark of the Antichrist is 666. 666 bears an amazing similarity with 600, stage 1, 60, stage 2, and 6, stage 3. A day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week. The mark of the beast will be on everyone buying and selling. This is the paper money we're using, which is bogus, which is fraudulent, which is haram. The paper money that we're using. And tomorrow they're going to be using electronic money. In fact, electronic money has already taken over paper money. But the amazing thing is that Dajjal is going to have to bring back gold and silver coins as money. Yes. I was in a Christian, Jewish, Muslim dialogue at Drew University in New Jersey, in the United States. And there were about a dozen rabbis and more than a dozen Christian ministers, and poor lonely Imran Hosein was the only one for representing Islam. And I got up and made a blunder. I was talking about how you changed the Bible and you put now that you are permitted, you are prohibited from lending money and interest to your brother Israelite, but you can lend money interest to me. I said, aren't you ashamed? And I said, this is what they were doing in the temple. When Jesus entered the temple, he found them lending money on interest. And that's why he cursed them. And he turned over their tables and he drove them out of the temple. And he said, you've taken the house of God and you transformed it into a den of thieves. Oh my gosh. The Christian ministers and the rabbis had a field day. They said, Imran, you're wrong. You're wrong. Let us tell you the correct answer. So I said, no, they said, people had to go to the temple and they had to pay to the temple for services. And they would also make donations to the temple. But Imran, they could not do it with Roman money because the Roman money had graven images, haram. So Imran, the temple had to mint its own coins. And when the people came to the temple, there were money changers. And the money changers had to change the Roman money for temple money. And in the process of changing, they were ripping them off. So you were wrong, Imran. Little did they know that in correcting me, they were so happy to correct me that day. In correcting me, and I'm grateful for them, they gave me the insight for me to say today that there's a tomorrow which is coming when Israel is going to have to mint gold and silver coins without any graven image. And only when those coins are in circulation, only then can Dajjal declare, I am the Messiah. So an international monetary system that is doing all kind of acrobatics is going to finally conclude with dinar and dirham. And so we ask, Where are the scholars of Islam?
جزاك الله خيرا على هذه التذكرة. If I'm not mistaken, I want to ask you, you have mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never married to Aisha radiallahu anha, and I don't understand. Can you give me some more explanation, please?
A marriage ceremony is invalid if a girl does not have the choice to say yes or no. Allah subhanahu, this is in the Sirah, Ibn Hisham, you find it there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicated through a vision that this, I've chosen this as your wife, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Once that communication was received, she is his wife. He doesn't have to marry her. She is his wife because Allah has chosen her as his wife. So there was never any marriage ceremony. No. So he did not marry her. Allah chose her for him. He did not marry her. But the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, in Sahih Muslim, in several other books of hadith, is that he married. She is saying, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha is saying, that the Prophet married me when I was 6. Someone did something to the wording. Instead of saying that Allah communicated to the Prophet that I am his wife when I was 6. Okay? Someone did something to it, I made it now, that he married me when I was 6. If this hadith is accepted as correct, which is in conflict with the Quran, then tomorrow, when the Sharia is enforced in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Syria, wherever the revolution takes place, these uprisings, this time bomb is waiting to explode. What are you going to do? Tell me. When they come to you to the court for a marriage to take place, are you going to say, yes, the marriage ceremony can take place, but you can't take your wife home? She has to remain with her mother. You cannot have khalwa with her, you cannot be alone with her. How can you do that? This is his wife. Huh? And the government is going to support him, because the idea is to embarrass Islam, to make Muslims a laughing stock of the world. So if you can take this 6-year-old girl back home, and you can say, well, I'm not going to have sexual relations with her, but forget that, when we're in the bedroom, that's us. Huh? It is haram, it is haram, it is haram to have sexual relations with a girl who has not become a woman. It is haram, it is haram, it is haram. And we can use the Quran to establish that. If it is haram to have sexual relations with a girl before she has become a woman, then how can you marry her? How can you marry her? So the Sharia court should say, no, the marriage is not permissible in accordance with the Quran. That only when she has become a woman, then you can marry her.
As you mentioned before, as a result of the Middle East uprising, Israel will wage the preemptive war to create a great Israel. So in the years to come towards the Akhir Zaman, what do you think were events that will take place in Southeast Asia particularly?
I like that question. I have a question to ask you first. When the Malay recites the Quran, he's not lazy. He says akhir. But when he's not reciting the Quran, he says ahir. Huh? Ahir zaman. No, not ahir. Ahir zaman. Don't be lazy. As soon as Israel launches a big war, which might start with an attack on Pakistan, nuclear plants and nuclear weapons, and a simultaneous attack on Iran, Iran's nuclear plants. As soon as that happens, Singapore will know our time has now come. Either Singapore acts this way, or it's the beginning of the end for Singapore. But I'm sure that Malaysian diplomacy is already aware of the problem. We have an ambassador right here. And he and I have already discussed the subject. Malaysia is not asleep. No. If an effort is made to take over Johor, or an effort is made to take over, what's the name of that island in Singapore? Not Java, the other one? Huh? No, the big one. Sumatra. Then you can't defend that little island of Singapore. Not possible. Not possible to defend it. Too vulnerable. Then you'll have some very interesting developments. It is better for me not to speak with too much details now. But just to make you aware that there are going to be dramatic developments in Southeast Asia as soon as Israel launches her attack.
This gonna be one question.
Assalamualaikum, Sheikh. My name is Sheikh. And recently there was a meeting in Kazakhstan. This meeting was attended by leaders from China and Russia and leaders from Middle Asia countries, and with President Ahmadinejad and leader of Pakistan was there as the observer. In Kazakhstan. Huh? And India, yes. And that meeting was
India.
And India. Yes, exactly. It was Shanghai Cooperation's organizations, and during that meeting, Pakistan leader have decided that they want to join that Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, do you see this as the beginning of alliance within Pakistan and Russia? And that is my question.
I studied in Pakistan. The knowledge that you see on display today is because of the training I got from great teachers in Pakistan. Okay? I have found great love for Islam amongst the people of Pakistan. Not only in Pakistan, but outside of Pakistan. But I found the worst leaders. There's nothing worse than them anywhere in the world than those who are leading Pakistan. And whenever a leader emerges who stands up, he's killed. He's assassinated. For all his faults, and Pakistanis don't like me to say this, for all the faults of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and he was a man who committed great evil, no doubt about it. Yet he did stand up for Pakistan and resisted them. And Henry Kissinger gave him a warning. We'll make a terrible example out of you if you continue this way. But he persisted. And in February 1974, he pulled off what was something that was very, very successful. It was the second Islamic Summit Conference in Lahore. Malik Faisal rahimahullah joined with Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to ensure that that summit conference takes place. And the rulers of the world didn't like it at all. And Indira Gandhi responded 2 months later to the Lahore Islamic Conference. 2 months later, in April, when India detonated her first nuclear blast, and India joined the nuclear club. That was the response to what Bhutto and Faisal did in February 74. And then when India detonated that first nuclear blast, then Bhutto declared, even if we have to eat grass, even if we have to eat grass, we must develop a nuclear deterrent. If the world of Islam today has a nuclear deterrent, which is why Pakistan is under such attack, part of the credit for that must go to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. I don't know why the Islamic movement in Pakistan is incapable of recognizing something which is of value. The hatred for Bhutto is so great that it blinds them to be able to do proper analysis. Ziaul Haq is the September massacre in Jordan, supporting and doing the dirty work of the Americans in Jordan against the Palestinians. So Ziaul Haq, like Bhutto, was also a man with blood on his hands, with great evil to be done by him. But Ziaul Haq also did great good. And the hatred for Ziaul Haq is so great amongst the secular thinkers, they can't recognize what good he did. It is because he was establishing himself independently from them that the aeroplane fell down from the sky. Yeah. And he became Shaheed. Okay? So any time Pakistan produces a leader who is able to stand up independently, they kill him. Benazir Bhutto, she not only wiped their feet for them, she walked the extra mile to say, I am with you. She did everything she could possibly do to say, I'm on your side. But they didn't believe her. They knew that this was a daughter who loved her father. And they knew that this daughter knew what they did to her father. So they didn't trust her. They didn't trust her. And when she was on the verge of recovering power in Pakistan, they destroyed her. You see? Despite all the evil of Benazir Bhutto, she still was better than what you have today.